Hey guys, tonight we step barefoot into the damp mud of a foggy 17th century village, one where the chickens gossip louder than the people, and the wind seems to carry more than just pollen. The cobbled streets are uneven, the chimney smoke smells faintly of rosemary and panic, and you've been accused of witchcraft. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across a weedy path into the center of the village where the court is held in what used to be someone's cow barn. The wooden beams sag with the weight of too many generations and too little logic. It's spring, but the weather hasn't decided whether to commit, so it swings wildly between sunshine and a drizzle that feels like someone's sneezing on your neck. Your feet are still sore from yesterday's barefoot walk through the churchyard. The priest insisted on it. Something about penance, or possibly just because he dislikes your face. The crowd gathered in the square isn't large, but every person is watching you, like you already have a pitchfork in your hand and a pact with Satan in your pocket. A girl clutches her mother's apron and stares. A dog sniffs your hem with concern. You wonder if the dog gets a vote. The air smells like wet moss, charcoal, and tension. You hear someone murmur the widow's cow went dry after she passed their doorstep. Another voice answers. She talks to plants. Real long-like. These are your neighbor's people you once shared stew with now, offering up theories with more heat than your hearth ever managed. Historians still argue whether witch trials were driven more by genuine belief or social convenience. In some places, people truly feared witches like they feared the plague. In others, it was the perfect excuse to snatch land settle grudges or blame someone for a string of bad luck and soggy wheat. In this town, unnamed for your protection and theirs, it's somewhere in between. They don't hate you. They just need you to be guilty. The local blacksmith, a man named Willem who still owes you a chicken, crosses his arms. Saw her picking herbs at dusk he offers to no one in particular, though loud enough for everyone to hear. Just saying. You resist the urge to point out that dusk is when herbs are most aromatic. It won't help. An old woman face folded like a linen sheet leans on a stick and mutters a rhyme. You catch the words devil and midwife. You used to bring her bread. Now she won't meet your eyes. What's worse, this entire farce has been legalized. Following the example of other pious regions, your village council recently adopted more formal witch hunting procedures, mostly translated from a terrifying manual called the Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches. Doesn't sound very cuddly, does it? And your judge a rotund man with a habit of mispronouncing Latin phrases and falling asleep during testimony. He once fined a man for suspicious apples. He believes that if God wants you to live, he'll make it obvious. You sit on a low wooden stool in the village square, hands tied with flax cord. There's a bucket nearby. You don't ask what it's for. It's probably for something unpleasant. A rooster crows, or maybe it screams. The line is blurry. Someone behind you sneezes, and 3 people cross themselves. The atmosphere is soaked in superstition and mild paranoia, like a small-town HOA meeting, but with fire. The village bell tolls. It's not the kind that calls people to prayer. It's the kind that says someone is in trouble, and tonight it's you. You wake up the next morning to the sound of someone shouting your name, not lovingly, not even legally. More like someone naming the pig they're about to butcher. Outside your cottage, a group has gathered. Some hold staffs, one holds a Bible. All hold suspicion like it's a hot mug of cider. The accusation your neighbor's goat has vanished. Poof, gone in the night, left only a small clump of fur and a trail of confused hoofprints. Which naturally means you must have summoned a demon to steal it for you. You blink the sleep from your eyes and step outside wearing your wool shift and a scowl. Why would I want a goat, you ask the crowd. Silence. You point at your vegetable patch. I grow squash. Someone mutters, she talks to squash. Another adds her garden's too green for April. Must be unnatural. You resist the urge to scream, they wouldn't hear it. Or worse, they'd hear it as a confession. One of the village women steps forward. Her name is Magda. You once lent her vinegar during a shortage. Now she glares like you've cursed her tomatoes. And what of my baby's fever, she snaps. You looked at him funny just last week. Now he burns. She doesn't mention that her baby was licking a moldy spoon. Details? Historians still argue whether these accusations were always believed or simply tolerated. For some villagers, witchcraft offered a neat explanation for everything they couldn't control: weather illness, infertility, crop failure, rashes in uncomfortable places. Others likely knew it was nonsense, but found it very convenient nonsense when they needed to target someone they envied or disliked. You try to reason, the goat probably wandered off. Maybe it ate nightshade. Then you planted the nightshade someone accuses. The logic is impressively circular. A boy points at your window. She keeps books, he says. Yes, you reply, so I can read. The gasps are immediate. A literate woman is almost worse than a witch. Possibly the same thing, really. Then comes the goat expert, an old man who smells like fermented turnips and claims to have been in communication with livestock for decades. He examines the trail of fur and announces with great authority that a familiar spirit done took it. Likely invisible. Wore hooves too big for its body. He squints at you, and you're looking a bit pale. That's a sign. A sign of not sleeping, you mutter, but no one's listening. The crowd swells. Not in anger yet, but in that curious, restless way humans gather before things get dramatic. There's something about other people's public ruin that's hard to look away from. Someone is already selling hot cider. You try not to think about what they brewed it in. As the morning wears on, a formal inquiry is called, which means they haul you to the village center, make you stand on a barrel, and let everyone shout their theories for an hour. It's like improv comedy, but instead of laughter, you get potential death. She wore red last Tuesday. One woman shrieks. And my milk soured that night. Red is just faded brown, you shout back. But again, logic is unwelcome here. The crowd begins listing every odd or mildly inconvenient thing that's happened in the past month and linking it to you. A man tripped in the orchard, witch. The well frog sang too loudly, witch. Someone dropped a spoon and it landed upright, witch. It's like a village game of Mad Libs, but the prize is your life. You're given no advocate, no chance to prepare, and no way to escape unless you count running into the woods and becoming an actual wild woman, which ironically would only confirm their suspicions. Historians suggest that while some accused witches did flee, most stayed either out of hope, fear, or lack of options. Flight was guilt. Silence was guilt. Tears, guilt. Smiling, definitely guilt. Someone brings up a strange smell that once came from your chimney. You explain it was burned cabbage. They exchange glances. Cabbage? Or conjuring? You start to laugh, but it's the wrong move. They take it as a sign that you're mocking the Holy Spirit. The inquiry wraps up. No goat, no concrete evidence, but plenty of smoke, and they're more than happy to assume fire. Before dusk, you're told the council will call for a formal judgment. They suggest you get your affairs in order. You don't own much. A worn comb, a cracked cup, a little pouch of rosemary you once used to flavor stew. You look around your small cottage. The warmth is gone. The corners seem darker now. The same home that once kept you safe from wolves now feels like it might turn you over to them. A fly buzzes against the window pane. Outside, someone walks past and spits. You sit down slowly, heart ticking like a clock made of stones. The goat is still missing. Your fate, however, is very much present, and it's coming. You're summoned to the village square just after dawn. The sky is the color of week-old milk, and a breeze carries the chill of unresolved grudges. You're told to appear before the magistrate Judge Thistlewhite, a man known for his flamboyant sleeves, wine-soaked sermons, and deeply questionable Latin. He sits upon a slightly raised platform made from old church pews under a makeshift canopy that flaps in the breeze like a judgmental flag. His powdered wig is lopsided. His robes are frayed at the hem. His gavel is a large wooden spoon which he bangs onto the table with unnecessary drama. You stand before the Lord, the people, and the fragrant power of justice. He says, though, his words are slightly slurred, and you're fairly sure he just quoted the village baker. The crowd has gathered again. Some munch on apples, others whisper with uncontainable glee. A few have brought their children who swing their legs and stare at you with wide eyes, unsure if this is a moral lesson or just a good excuse to skip chores. Judge Thistlewhite squints at you. You're the one with the suspicious turnips. Yes, I grow carrots. Exactly. Confession noted. You're not allowed to speak unless spoken to. And when spoken to, you're not really expected to answer, just to nod appropriately and perhaps tremble a bit. Given the severity of the charges, he continues, we shall begin with a preliminary ordeal. Your favorite. This one's called the witch's cake. And no, it's not something you can post on Instagram with a "Waska witchy vibes" hashtag. This is where things take a turn for the culinary. The village healer, a stern woman with soot-stained hands, explains the process. You will bake a cake, a very special cake, made with flour ashes and a sample of your urine. Yes, yours. Because apparently the devil works in very peculiar ways. You're handed the ingredients and watched like a hawk as you mix them together over a smoky hearth. The resulting dough is gray, sticky, and emits an odor that suggests both despair and forgotten lentils. This culinary monstrosity will then be fed to a dog. Why? Because if the dog convulses or barks in a certain way, it proves the cake was cursed. Thus you are guilty. If the dog eats it calmly, well, you might still be guilty, but less theatrically so. You glance at the unfortunate animal selected for this performance. He's a large mutt with one ear up, one down, and the tired expression of someone who's seen too much. You offer the cake. He sniffs it, looks at you, sniffs it again. Sniffs it, and eats it. Everyone leans in. Nothing happens. Then he licks his lips and sits down. Someone in the crowd mutters, "Witch must have made it taste good." Another counters. She tried to hide the curse. Historians still argue whether these trials were ever meant to discover truth or merely confirm community suspicion. The witch's cake test was practiced sporadically, most famously during the Salem trials, where a slave named Tituba supposedly used one to identify a witch. Ironically, it did not prevent her from being accused. Judge Thistlewhite frowns. The dog did not perish. Intriguing, but not exculpatory. The dog burps. "See," says a man near the front. That's not a normal burp. You're taken aside and asked if you'd like to confess now to save the village further effort. They promise to be gentle if you cooperate. You politely decline, mostly because you're not entirely sure what you'd be confessing to. The goat, the weather, the dog's burp. The crowd disperses for the time being. The baker returns to her bread stall. A boy throws pebbles at a tree. But eyes still linger on you like you're a pothole no one wants to fix, but everyone keeps tripping over. Back in your cottage, you try to calm your thoughts. You wash your hands twice. You make tea, though your hands tremble too much to hold the cup. Outside, a woman sings to her child, and you wonder what songs people will sing about you. You sit by the fire staring at the flames until the shadows on the wall begin to look like pointy hats and dancing goats. You're beginning to feel like the village has already decided. Now they're just going through the motions. Like seasoning meat they've already planned to roast. You lie down eventually, but sleep comes like a guest who's unsure it's welcome. And in the dead of night, a voice outside whispers, "Tomorrow the witch pricker comes." You've never met him, but you've heard stories, and none of them end well. Morning breaks with the soft clanging of bells and a rooster that sounds like it's auditioning for a ghost story. You wake to the smell of damp thatch and old smoke and something else. Something metallic, sharp, and out of place. By midday, he arrives. The witch pricker. He doesn't knock. He doesn't smile. He doesn't introduce himself, though everyone in the village already seems to know his name. Master Elric of Hollowmere. He wears a leather vest with too many pockets and a wide-brimmed hat adorned with what appears to be teeth. Human or animal, you don't ask. His beard is forked deliberately so. His eyes dart too fast to be comforting. He carries a case. Inside are his tools, needles, pins, small blades, and a flat disc made of bone. All polished. All ready. His job, as the village explains in low tones, is to find the witch's mark. A spot on your body where the devil kissed you. A mark that doesn't feel pain. A freckle. A scar. An extra nipple. A pimple with bad timing. He's paid per discovery. So, he usually finds something. You are brought to the council hall where hay has been laid on the floor, and privacy is a concept left behind with logic. A few village elders stand watch eyes lowered, pretending not to look. Master Elric gestures for you to sit. You do. He begins the examination rolling up your sleeves, peering at your skin like a jeweler appraising a flawed gem. Ah, he says, tapping a mole on your collarbone. Suspicious. It's been there since I was 3. Of course, they always have. He scratches something in his notebook, probably a doodle. He produces a long pin. Now hold still. The pin presses into your skin. You flinch. He frowns. Still alive, I see, he mutters as if disappointed. He pokes again, this time your thigh, then your back. Each time you feel it. Each time he seems mildly insulted by your nervous system. Finally, he finds a small raised bump near your rib. He pokes. Nothing. No flinch, no pain. You want to scream that you're too numb from fear to react, but he's already nodding solemnly. This is the mark, he says, tapping it with grim satisfaction. The devil feeds here. Historians still argue whether witch prickers were true believers or enthusiastic grifters. Some carried retractable needles designed to fake proof of a mark. Others likely convinced themselves of their righteous duty. In many places, these tests were actually illegal, but law rarely stood up to fear once a village was aflame with suspicion. The council murmurs. One man clutches a Bible like it might suddenly leap into action. A woman covers her child's ears. You're led outside into the cold wind and asked if you'd like to confess again. Confession, they say, is cleansing, merciful, preferable to what you're starting to understand, that no matter what you say or do, your fate has already been penciled in. Back in your cell, which is actually just a repurposed food storage hut with hay and bad ventilation, you sit with your thoughts. A rat scurries along the wall. You watch it momentarily, envious of its freedom. Someone slides a bowl of water under the door. It's warmish, a kindness. You suspect they feel a little bad about what's coming, but not enough to stop it. Outside, the witch pricker regales a crowd with stories. His voice carries. One woman had a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. Another had a tongue that curled like a serpent's. Once found a man with 2 belly buttons. He said it was a hernia. I said it was heresy. The crowd laughs. He's popular now. He may even stay a few extra days. Maybe offer discounts. You lie down head on straw, the floor hard beneath you. Your wrists ache from being tied. Your back stings from the pinpricks. You think about that mark, how it really doesn't feel much. Just a numb little bump. It's probably a cyst. But here, that's enough to convict. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but dreams don't come easily when you're labeled by a man with a needle and a hatful of teeth. Tomorrow, they say, will be the swimming. You've never been a strong swimmer. The next morning feels quieter, heavier, like the air itself knows what's coming. There's a strange stillness in the village, the kind that often precedes something final. Even the chickens seem less noisy, as if they've been briefed on today's event. You're brought to the river just past sunrise. It's not much of a river, really. More of a sluggish stream, murky and edged with slick stones and the occasional discarded clog. But to the villagers, it might as well be the gates of truth. This is the swimming ordeal. The idea is painfully simple and astonishingly stupid. Tie the accused, throw them in the water, and see what happens. If you float, you're guilty because the water, symbol of purity, rejects you. If you sink, you're innocent, and probably unconscious, or worse. They do tie a rope around you for safety, they say, which is a bit like being handed a napkin at a beheading. The knots are tight. Not cruel exactly, just practiced. You stand barefoot in the shallows, your breath fogging in the cold air. The water ripples like it's trying to warn you. The judge is there, still adjusting his wig. The witch pricker watches with arms folded, already writing in his little book. A boy with a flute provides musical accompaniment. Badly. 2 men take you by the arms and lead you to the deeper center of the stream. You try not to slip, though part of you wonders if slipping might save time. Ready, one asks. You open your mouth to say something, anything, but they let go. You hit the water with a splash that feels like knives. Cold stabs your lungs. The ropes pull against your limbs. You twist, flail slightly, try to stay calm. You float. Of course you float. Your body, wrapped in thick wool filled with shallow air, rises slightly in the current. Not much, but enough. She floats, someone cries. There's a small gasp, a cheer, a cluck of "I knew it." You want to scream that humans are supposed to float, that this isn't divine judgment, it's physics. but you're shivering too hard to form words. Your teeth click like a broken metronome. Historians still debate the origins of the swimming ordeal. Some link it to ancient trial rituals, others say it was a medieval invention given new life during the witch-hunting frenzy. Its use was sporadic, often reserved for hopeless cases where no evidence could be found, which of course was often. The ropes pull you back in. A man with a beard grunts as he drags you toward the bank. Almost lost her, he says. The implication is that would have been inconvenient. You collapse onto the wet stones, coughing and trembling. Mud seeps into your dress. You hear whispers. Some say you used magic to resist drowning. Others claim the devil kept you afloat. A child offers you a piece of bread. Her mother yanks her back. No one says you're innocent. They wrap you in a damp blanket and walk you back to your cell as if nothing unusual has happened. You leave wet footprints behind you like a ghost unsure of where it belongs. Inside the cell, you strip off your soaked clothes, hang them near a sputtering fire someone has taken pity on you enough to light. You curl up limbs, stiff eyes wide, mind racing. The judge didn't even look you in the eye. The witch pricker merely nodded, already preparing his next report. This isn't about truth. It never was. It's theater. A ritual. A show to make the villagers feel righteous and the system feel certain. Outside, someone sweeps the steps. A horse whinnies in the distance. Life continues because that's what it does. You, however, are stuck. Floating or not. Tomorrow, they say, will be the Bible test. Apparently, God has a say now. The sun rises again, though you almost wish it wouldn't. Your body aches from the cold swim, your wrists are raw from the ropes, and your mind feels like it's been pickled in fear. You sit upright in your cell, half-dressed and wholly exhausted, wondering how long a person can be afraid before it becomes a kind of second skin. They bring you out after breakfast, not yours, of course. You get a single hunk of crusty bread and some water that smells faintly like moss. The guards, however, chew roasted turnips and gossip loudly about whose cousin once saw a real witch in the next county over. You're escorted back to the village square where Judge Thistlewhite sits again now, under a large umbrella, sipping something that looks suspiciously like mulled wine. Today he announces with a dramatic flourish, we test her with the word of God. The crowd stirs. Someone coughs. A baby cries. A sheep bleats with disinterest. The Bible test sounds simple, like a game a child might invent. You are to stand straight, calm, and penitent. A large, heavy Bible will be placed on your head. If it stays there without falling, particularly if you can recite a psalm at the same time, then perhaps the Lord has not forsaken you. But if the Bible tumbles, if you sway, if your lips falter or your memory fails, well, the devil is clearly riding on your shoulders. They bring out the Bible. It's massive. A thick, leather-bound volume with gold leaf and a clasp shaped like a lion's paw. It looks more like something you'd use to press cheese than read scripture. Historians still argue whether these symbolic ordeals were spiritual trials or social spectacles. Some say they were meant to give accused witches a chance to prove innocence, but most never passed. The tests weren't designed to exonerate. They were designed to confirm. You're brought to the platform, your hair is still damp, your hands shake. Psalm 23 says the judge. You know it, of course. Everyone does. But your voice is dry as parchment. The Lord is my shepherd, you begin barely above a whisper. They place the Bible on your head. It weighs more than guilt. I shall not want. Your knees tremble slightly. The crowd leans in. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. A wind kicks up. A bird squawks. The Bible wobbles. You freeze midline. He leadeth me. The Bible tilts just a fraction, beside the still waters. Then it slips, not dramatically. Just a slow, heavy slide down the side of your head before landing with a thud on the wooden platform. Gasps echo like church bells. Someone clutches their pearls or perhaps just their shirt collar. Either way, drama achieved. Judge Thistlewhite frowns deeply as though you've personally offended Scripture. The witch pricker sitting nearby nods solemnly like a man whose expectations have been met. I was nervous, you start to say. The wind silence. The judge roars wine sloshing over the rim of his goblet. You are escorted back down the steps past faces full of smug satisfaction, pity, and one boy who sticks out his tongue just because he can. Back in your holding hut, You sit in stunned quiet. The absurdity of it all gnaws at you more than hunger. A goat goes missing. A garden grows too well. You float. A book falls. And for these crimes you may be burned. You look at your hands. They're yours. Still. You press your palms together and pray not for mercy, but for a miracle of logic. Outside the village begins preparations for what they now openly call the trial. Not the ordeal, not the investigation, just the trial. As though that word still means something. Someone passes by the window humming a hymn. You don't know whether to hum along or scream. Your fate now rests on testimony, you're told. And the testimony? It's already been gathered. Tomorrow you'll hear what your neighbors really think. Spoiler, it's not good. They bring you out just after midday when the sun is bright and merciless, as if even the weather has chosen a side. The trial is to be held in the old barn, which has been converted into a courtroom, meaning they have added 3 benches a table with a wax-stained candle and a banner someone painted with the words, "In veritate lux." You suspect the painter wasn't fluent in Latin or spelling. Judge Thistlewhite is already seated looking regal in a chair too big for him and robes too ornate for the occasion. His wig seems floppier than usual. His expression, however, is sharp. The witch pricker stands by arms folded and expert, waiting to confirm that, yes, the goat did disappear due to you. A small crowd files in, whispering and clutching prayer beads. A few villagers wave awkwardly, most just stare. Your hands are tied loosely now, formality, they claim. You're seated on a stool that wobbles with every breath. Your ankles brush against straw. Your mouth is dry enough to crack. First to speak is Goodman Halberd the miller. She once walked past my house, he says, and I got a nosebleed not 2 hours later. Was there anything unusual about her behavior, the judge asks already, disinterested. She said, "Good morning." The crowd murmurs, "How dare you?" Next comes Widow Grent. She sings while she hangs laundry, she says, even in bad weather. And sometimes the sheets dry faster than mine. Gasps. A young boy is brought forward. He fidgets and won't meet your eyes. She stared at me, he says. How long, the judge asks. Long enough, the boy says, and sits back down. You want to object. You want to laugh. You want to cry. Instead, you sit very still and try to think about cabbage. Anything but this. Next, Magda takes the stand again, the woman whose baby had a fever. She holds the child now red-cheeked and dozing. She cursed him, she says simply. How do you know this, the judge asks. She looked at him. Magda says, her voice trembling slightly with conviction. And that night he screamed. All night, like something was chasing him. It might have been a fever you offer gently. She stiffens. Or the devil. Historians still argue whether these testimonies were born of belief or coercion. In some cases, accusers were pressured by clergy or officials to say what needed saying. In others, they may have truly believed in what they were saying, or wanted to believe. In a world without medicine, psychology, or weather forecasts, people reached for explanations, and you were the nearest one. Then comes Master Elric, the witch pricker. He recounts his findings with relish, detailing the mark on your side, your failure during the Bible test, and your unnatural floating. She may appear ordinary, he says, but evil hides behind familiar faces. That's why it's so effective. He closes his case with, in my professional opinion, she is a witch. Then bows slightly. You imagine his business card reads Stabber of Suspicious Women since 1643. Finally, you are allowed to speak. Briefly, you stand slowly, legs trembling but steady. I am not a witch, you say. I'm a gardener. A woman, a neighbor. I've fed some of you when you were hungry. I've held your children. I've never harmed a soul. The room stays silent. And if God is watching you continue, I hope he sees this for what it is. Fear and fiction. Judge Thistlewhite clears his throat unimpressed. Thank you for your commentary. The council steps outside to deliberate. A formality. You stay seated, fingers clenching and unclenching in your lap. When they return, they don't sit. Judge Thistlewhite remains standing, looking down on you like a tired schoolmaster. The evidence is clear, he says. You have failed 3 sacred tests. Testimony is unanimous. You are found guilty of consorting with dark forces. The crowd nods as if this outcome was obvious all along. The sentence to be carried out within 3 days. Mercifully, he adds, "We shall give you time to repent. If you do, the soul might be saved even if the body is not." You're led away again past the same faces. They don't look angry, they look satisfied, which somehow feels worse. You don't cry. Not yet, not here. But later in the dark, with only rats for company and damp straw beneath you, your body finally remembers how. They let you sleep, sort of. Or maybe they just forget to wake you. Either way, you spend a few twilight hours curled like a cat in your corner of the cell, pressed against the stone wall, listening to the creaks and groans of an old building doing its best impression of sympathy. Morning doesn't bring breakfast, it brings silence. Not peace, but the kind of silence that builds before a thunderstorm or a family argument. You sit up slowly, your muscles stiff, your mind foggy. They come for you before midday. Not to execute you, to prepare you. You're not entirely sure what that means until they lead you into a different part of the building, one that smells like wax dust and anticipation. There you meet Father Alwyn, a tall, pale priest, with the enthusiasm of a moss-covered stone and the eyes of a man who's seen far too much confession and not enough honesty. He stands beside a table where parchment lies curled and ink dries too slowly. "I am here," he says in the most exhausted voice possible, "to help you cleanse your soul." You raise an eyebrow. "You mean torture?" He blinks. "We don't use that word." "What word do you use, assistance?" You're seated in a chair with no arms under a flickering candle. It's a technique you suspect flickering light makes the shadows dance, and dancing shadows make guilt seem nearer than it is. Father Alwyn begins gently. He reads from the scriptures, mostly the bits about temptation women and eternal flames. Then he starts asking questions, repeatedly, persistently. Did you ever dream of flying? Did a man ever touch your hand and fall ill afterward? Have you ever walked backwards into your home? You answer honestly, no. No. And once, but only because you were carrying a goose and couldn't turn around. He takes notes nonetheless. Over time, the questions grow stranger. Do you know the Lord's Prayer? You nod. Say it backwards? You stare. That's a common trick, he says. Witches cannot say it in reverse. You try. Amen. Evil, deliver us from blasphemy, he mutters, writing furiously. Then come the hours of silence. You're made to sit still while he stares at you, waiting for cracks to show. Every twitch is noted. Every sigh becomes potential guilt. You're not chained, but you might as well be. Movement is treated as resistance. Historians still debate whether this kind of interrogation counted as official torture. Technically, in some places, actual physical harm was forbidden, without formal permission from church or state. But the rules were easily stretched. Deprivation, isolation, verbal pressure all were used to chip away at a person's sanity, without breaking the rules, just their will. Eventually, he brings out the thumbscrews. They're only a tool, he says gently. We rarely need them. You look at the metal device, simple, cruel, effective. 2 thick plates, a screw to press them together. A tool designed to shrink time and expand confessions. I'm not a witch, you whisper. That's what they all say. I'm not all of them. He hesitates. For a second, you think you see something human behind his eyes. Doubt, pity. But then he lifts the parchment again. There are rumors, he says softly, that you've spoken to crows. I fed them breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are often used in summoning rituals. Or lunch. He frowns. I've been told, he continues, that the marks on your arms resemble symbols seen in the Black Book of Shadows. They're from carrying firewood. Firewood is a symbol of the burning. You want to scream, but you've already learned that loud noises only confirm their beliefs. Instead, you say nothing. Hours pass. The sun moves. A guard offers water. The priest prays aloud, asking God to loosen your tongue and crush your pact. You begin to feel your grip on time loosen. How long have you been in this room? How long until they stop? But they don't. Because they don't need to. You're already broken. Just not the way they expected. Later, when they finally bring you back to your cell, you find someone has left a small bundle of herbs on your straw. Lavender and sage. You don't know who placed it. You don't ask. You just hold it to your nose and inhale slowly, gratefully. Outside, the wind picks up. Somewhere a baby laughs. You curl up again and try to remember what kindness feels like. The next day starts with a thump, a heavy knock at your door, followed by a grunt that might be your name or just indigestion. Either way, it signals that your presence is once again required. You rise slowly, muscles sore from too much sitting, too little sleeping, and just enough dread to tighten every joint. Today's ordeal isn't physical, it's theatrical. They tell you spectral evidence. You're marched to the chapel, which has been repurposed into a sort of courtroom/stage. There are rows of benches, a few candles, and a cluster of townsfolk already whispering like they're waiting for the village's most awkward puppet show. Judge Thistlewhite is present, of course, his wig refreshed and lopsided in a new direction today. His cup steams with something spiced. The witch pricker lounges nearby boots on a stool whittling a stick into something vaguely pointy. But today's star witness, she's 8 years old. Her name is Liddy and she's the baker's niece. She stands beside the judge, swinging her arms slightly, gaze fixed on the floor. She has something to share, says the judge in a voice that suggests something momentous is about to happen. Liddy begins. I saw her ghost sit on my chest. She whispers, pointing directly at you. She held me down and whispered in Latin. I don't know Latin, but I felt it. You blink. Ghost. Yes. Liddy nods solemnly. Her spirit. It flew in through the window like a moth. You consider asking what it was wearing. Instead, you ask, when? 2 nights ago, she says. After I sneezed 3 times. That's how I knew. The crowd murmurs. A woman clutches her apron. A man crosses himself slowly. She pinched me too, Liddy adds, with ghost hands. You glance toward the judge. He's nodding. You stammer, how could I be in my cell and flying around pinching people? The judge raises a finger. Spirits are not bound by doors. Or logic, apparently, you mutter. Spectral evidence, a particularly insidious form of proof that allowed accusers to claim your spirit, harmed them even if you were physically elsewhere. Most infamously used during the Salem witch trials, it was damning, precisely because it was unprovable. You couldn't deny what couldn't be seen, or measured, or even questioned. The judge turns to the witch pricker. Would the mark on her side support this kind of behavior? Absolutely, he says without hesitation. That's a classic spirit channeling spot. You wonder if you should get it tattooed with a rebuttal. Then comes another witness, a young man this time. He stands awkwardly, hat in hands. She looked at me once, he says, and I tripped over my own feet. Everyone leans in. The implication is enormous. She laughed, he adds. You remember this. He fell while trying to impress a girl by hopping over a fence. You chuckled once, mostly at his poor landing. The judge nods again. Derision often used by witches to shame the righteous. You stare at the floor, trying to sink into it. Next up, the candle incident. A woman claims that when you walked past her home, a candle extinguished on its own. It just flicked out, she says, like a sneeze. The crowd gasps. Judge Thistlewhite furrows his brow. It is known, he intones, that witches can smother flame with thought alone. Historians still puzzle over why people clung so tightly to stories like this. Perhaps because they were simple, easy to tell, easy to repeat, and above all, comforting. In a world where life made little sense, blaming a neighbor made things feel ordered, even if wrong. Your heart pounds in your chest. You think about the herbs on your straw yesterday. Someone does believe you, or at least pities you. But they're silent now. Maybe they're in the crowd. Maybe they're holding a hand over their child's mouth, hoping not to be next. After an hour of this nonsense, the judge clears his throat. It is clear, he says, that this woman's spiritual form has been active and malevolent. These accounts align with the presence of evil intent. He pauses, lifts his cup, and takes a long sip. This evidence shall be included in our judgment. And just like that, you are led away again. Back to your cell. Back to the hay. Back to the dark. You sit for a long while, hands clasped, wondering how a world so full of prayers can be so empty of justice. Outside bells ring for supper. You receive none. The wind howls once briefly. You almost envy it how free it is to pass through walls without accusation. Night comes early now, or maybe it just feels that way. The hours blur together, marked only by the shift in light through the slats of your cell, and the increasingly elaborate excuses people find to visit you under the guise of duty. One brings straw, another inspects your chains. A third just lingers as if waiting for you to glow in the dark or sprout horns. They're waiting for you to crack. You can feel it. You sit in the corner, knees drawn up, thinking about all the things that used to matter. Planting seasoned bread, rising, mending your sleeves. Now all that matters is whether you'll live long enough to watch the sky turn orange 3 more times. By midday, they arrive again. This time they're gentler. Not out of kindness, but ceremony. You're being moved for preparation, they say. You ask preparation for what they don't answer. They escort you past the square where a wooden platform is being built, plank by plank. You don't need to ask what it's for. The townspeople glance away as you pass. Some make the sign of the cross. A child waves. His mother pulls his arm down sharply. You're taken to the old rectory where a smaller room has been set aside for what they call spiritual review. It sounds like an after-dinner mint, but feels like sentencing in slow motion. Waiting inside is a priest you don't know, younger than the last one. Kind eyes. He introduces himself as Father Clement. I'm here to speak with you? He says not at you. You don't reply at first. Trust comes slow these days. He sits with you. Quiet. No books, no parchment, no tools. Just the two of you and a single candle flickering, like it's as nervous as you are. Finally, he says, I don't believe in burning witches. You look up. I believe people fear what they can't explain. That's not heresy. That's history. You say nothing, but something in your chest shifts slightly. He continues. I've read your record. It's mostly herbs, gardens, and gossip. You nod. I did feed crows once. So did Elijah, he says, smiling faintly. The Bible is full of odd friendships. He leans forward. They want a confession. They say if you confess, the fire will be quicker. Or avoided. You meet his eyes. Is that true? He sighs. No, but they want to believe it is. Historians have debated the role of clergy in witch trials. Some were enablers, others resistors. Many walked a thin line between spiritual duty and social obligation, doing what they could to soften the blow without stopping the blade. Records survive of priests offering final comforts to accused witches, sacraments, prayers, and in rare cases, shelter. But more often they watched helplessly as fear outran faith. Father Clement offers you a simple meal, bread and broth. You eat it slowly, carefully, like it might be your last. When he stands, he asks gently, do you want to make peace with God? You hesitate. I haven't made war with him. That seems to satisfy him. You'll be asked to speak again tomorrow, he says. To the town. Before the sentence is carried out, you blink. It's set. Then they'll listen, he says, but they've already decided. He offers a small wooden cross carved simply. Not for guilt, just for strength. You take it. Not out of belief exactly, but because it feels like something to hold. You're returned to your cell before dusk. A storm rolls in soft rain at first, then heavier. The wind pushes through the gaps in the wood like it's searching for you. You sit in the straw cross in hand and wait. You think of all the people who've stood here before you. Not just witches, midwives, healers, outsiders, loud women, quiet women, poor men with land someone else wanted, children who dreamed the wrong dreams. You wonder who will be next, and whether someone will one day tell your story not with fear but with truth. Outside, the storm hushes. Inside, you begin to pray not because it will save you, but because it feels like a kind of resistance. The morning arrives gray and reluctant. You hear it before you see it. The rustle of boots on gravel, the clink of chains being moved, the muttered voices of people pretending this is normal. You sit still, fingers wrapped around the wooden cross. Father Clement gave you, now warm from your grip. It's not comfort exactly. But it is something to do with your hands. You're given a cloak. Heavy. Hooded. You suspect it's less about modesty and more about optics. They don't want you looking like someone's daughter or sister when they walk you through the streets. They want you looking small, anonymous, contained. A guard appears, clears his throat. They're ready for you. You repeat, as if they are a court, not a crowd with pitchforks hiding behind polite words. You're escorted through the village again, but this time you feel no glances, just a wall of silence. People stand on porches at windows behind carts, watching without watching. No one throws anything. No one speaks. It's as if the entire village has decided the decent thing is to pretend you're already gone. You're brought to the platform, not the execution site yet. This is a different one. A raised wooden box with a railing and a lectern. Someone's even brought out a chair, though it's not offered to you. You stand. Judge Thistlewhite is here again. Of course. Wig freshly powdered, robes ironed. He clears his throat and says with what he must think is solemnity. Before the final sentence is carried out, the accused may speak in her defense. A murmur moves through the crowd. Not excitement, not tension, just curiosity. What could you possibly say? You step forward. The boards creak beneath your feet. The sky is low, undecided between drizzle and gloom. You look at the crowd. Some familiar faces. The baker. The boy who accused you of ghost pinching. Magda clutching her baby. Even the dog who ate the witch's cake sits near the front tongue, out as if awaiting the sequel. You begin. I know what you think I am. Your voice is clearer than you expect. The cross in your hand helps. So does the rain. It gives the silence texture. You think I'm dangerous, unnatural, evil? That I made your crops fail and your babies cry and your goats vanish? A pause. A crow caws. Someone coughs. I didn't. But I understand why you believe it. Life is hard. Death comes easily. And sometimes it feels better to have someone to blame than to have no reason at all. You scan the faces. Some look away. Others frown, unsure whether this counts as repentance. I won't confess to things I didn't do. I won't pretend I kissed the devil or flew through windows or danced with demons under a blood moon. I watered my garden. I fed birds. I read when I could. I listened when others didn't. A longer pause. A child nearby squirms. The dog yawns. And if that makes me a witch in your eyes, you continue. Then perhaps what you're afraid of isn't me. Perhaps it's the idea that someone could live without needing your permission. A small gasp ripples through the crowd. You're not sure from whom. Doesn't matter. Judge Thistlewhite stiffens. This is not the time for speeches, he says, though he literally invited you to give one. I'm done, you say. Father Clement stands at the edge of the crowd, hands folded, eyes steady on yours. You nod once. So does he. You're taken back down. No applause, of course, just wetboards and the creak of ropes being tested behind the scaffold. Historians often reflect on these final statements, the accused who did not beg, who did not grovel, who chose clarity over surrender. Some called them mad, others brave. The line between the two was always thin, especially when drawn by a fearful hand. Your led-away cloak flapping in the wind. The execution is set for morning. You're told to rest. Instead, you sit awake. You hum a lullaby you half remember from childhood. You twist the cross in your fingers until your skin forgets how to let go. Tomorrow comes quickly and slowly. Time is strange like that on your last day. Dawn doesn't so much arrive as creep in thin, colorless, cautious. The cell is cold, the kind of cold that sinks into your fingertips and just waits. You haven't slept. Not really, but your body is still, and that's enough. They knock once. This time they don't bother with polite words. You rise on your own, you dress in silence. They don't offer breakfast. No one ever eats much on a burning day. You step outside. The sky is heavy low with clouds that seem unsure whether to weep or watch. The village green has changed overnight. There are rows of benches. A cart selling apples. Someone plays a lute quietly, the tune wandering like it forgot what it was doing. The stake has been erected, tall, straight, lashed with ropes. A ring of firewood circles its base like a crown made of splinters. It's not your first time seeing one, but it's the first time you're expected to climb it. They bring you forward gently like you're a reluctant guest of honor. The judge stands off to one side, more ceremonial than commanding now. He doesn't look at you. Maybe that's part of the ritual too, pretend you're already smoke. Father Clement appears beside you, eyes heavy with grief. He whispers, I asked again. For mercy? For delay? You don't ask what they said. He touches your arm. Say whatever you need to. Say it loudly. You nod. The crowd murmurs as you ascend the small platform. The wood groans under your weight. You keep your chin up though the wind tangles your hair, like it's trying to hold you back. A man ties your ankles. Another fastens the ropes at your waist and shoulders. They're not cruel, but they're not gentle either. Just tired. Like they've done this before and it never got easier. The firewood smells fresh. It will smoke more than burn. You wonder if that's intentional. Smoke takes longer. Judge Thistlewhite steps forward and begins the sentence, his voice full of pious fatigue. Having been found guilty of consorting with evil and having shown no true repentance, the accused shall now face cleansing by flame in accordance with local and divine law. You close your eyes. You hear a bird cry. You think of your garden. But then something, a shout, not loud, not angry, just clear. I saw the goat heads turn. A boy steps forward holding a length of frayed rope. It was in the woods, caught in a bush, alive. The crowd rustles. Judge Thistlewhite frowns. Irrelevant. The verdict has been passed, but she didn't steal it, the boy says. She's not a witch. Father Clement steps closer. If the original accusation has been disproved, shouldn't the verdict be reconsidered? A tense silence follows. You hear someone whisper, it was just a goat. Then Magda, yes, Magda, whose baby was the linchpin of your doom, speaks. My son got better. Without herbs, without prayers, just better. Maybe she didn't do anything. Someone else murmurs agreement, then another. Historians call it the tipping moment when doubt spreads faster than fear. In a few rare cases, executions were halted at the last second, not from mercy but confusion. People began to question the logic of the ritual. If she didn't kill the goat, if the baby's fever broke on its own, then what else might they have been wrong about Judge Thistlewhite glares caught between ceremony and survival? The sentence is lawful, he insists, though. Now it sounds like a question. A man from the crowd steps forward. But is it just more murmuring, less certainty? Finally, the judge lifts his hands, sighs heavily, and announces, the execution shall be postponed. Not reversed, not nullified, just delayed. You are untied slowly. The ropes fall away like vines. You don't move at first. Your legs are stiff, your eyes blinking into a world that almost wasn't there for you. They don't cheer. No one claps. It's not a triumph. It's an intermission. You're led back to the rectory where Father Clement offers you tea. Your hands shake as you lift the cup. You were right, you say quietly, about what they don't believe I'm innocent. They just aren't sure I'm guilty. He nods. It's enough. For now. Outside, the villagers begin to wander away, some in thought, some in shame, a few with fresh apples in hand. You look out the window. The stake still stands. But for the first time in days, the wind seems to pass over it, instead of circling it. The days that follow are filled with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the brittle sort that cracks under footfalls and unspoken questions. You're not free. Not quite. But you're not dead either, which is apparently enough to confuse the village into temporary civility. They don't imprison you again. They call it house watch. You're told to stay within the bounds of your garden, which is both a kindness and a quiet warning. Stray too far and suspicion may sprout again like mold on bread or weeds through cobblestones. Your cottage feels smaller now, the shadows longer. You sweep the floor, mend a torn sleeve, and try to remember who you were before your name became synonymous with smoke. Outside you hear villagers passing. Some walk faster as they near your home. Others pause as if hoping to catch you mid-curse. One woman, bless her crooked heart, leaves an onion on your windowsill. It's not exactly a peace offering, but you boil it anyway. Historians still puzzle over why some accused witches were spared at the 11th hour. Was it divine intervention luck? Or simply the ripple of doubt touching one heart and then another like a contagion more potent than fear? In your case, it seems it was the reappearance of a goat and the unexpected honesty of a child. Not that anyone has apologized. The judge gone back to his duties, pretending his powdered wig never almost sentenced you to flames. The witch pricker departed on horseback, mumbling something about ungrateful villages and blunted pins. Good riddance. But the air hasn't quite cleared. Father Clement visits, bringing bread and conversation. He sits with you in the garden, careful not to ask questions that have no gentle answers. You could leave, he says one afternoon. Start over. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere that doesn't smell like judgment. You nod. I could, but you don't. Not yet. Because your garden needs tending, your herbs have overgrown, and leaving might feel like admitting they were right. One morning you wake to find a small note slipped under your door. Just 4 words, I didn't believe them. There's no signature, just a pressed sprig of lavender tucked alongside it. You place it on the mantel. A few days later, 2 children wander into your yard, too young to know fear. They ask if the crows are yours. You tell them no, but they do visit often. They ask if you know stories. You do. And you tell them one. About a girl who wasn't a witch but was treated like one anyway. You leave out the firewood. They come back the next day. Your reputation shifts slowly. You go from the witch to that woman to the one with the tea that helps you sleep. You're not trusted, not really, but you're tolerated. Sometimes even thanked. At the next market, someone offers you honey in exchange for dried sage. You accept. You walk home with a jar in your basket, sunlight dappled across your shoulders, and think about how strange it is to live in the aftermath of your own death sentence. You're still watched, of course, but less suspiciously, more curiously. And one day a traveling magistrate passes through inquiring about a previous case. The villagers say it was all a misunderstanding, a misjudgment, a goat-related confusion. You listen from behind your shutters and smile bitterly. Because of course now it's a goat. Not fear, not superstition, not bloodlust, just a goat. Spring stretches her arms across the village like she's trying to make up for everything that came before. The ground softens. The flowers try their best. Even the trees seem to breathe easier, shaking off frost the way you once tried to shake off accusations. And you survive. People don't say your name with quite as much weight anymore. The edge is duller. It's no longer a whispered accusation, it's a reference point. Over by her garden, they say. Or the woman with the herbs. You've become geography. But sometimes when the air is damp and the clouds hang low, the questions come back. Not from others, from you. What if the boy hadn't found the goat? What if Magda hadn't spoken up? What if you'd sneezed in front of the wrong person? You stir stew in your pot and think you'd have burned, and the world would have gone on. The crows would have found another fence post, the herbs would have grown wild. Someone would have moved into your cottage eventually, maybe even borrowed your kettle. And no one would remember your name. That's the true danger of these trials, not just the deaths, but the erasure. The slow sanding down of a person until all that's left is a story told by someone else. Usually badly. Historians still wrestle with this. The ones who study trial records, who piece together lives from stained paper and second-hand testimony. Sometimes they find names, fragments. She had red hair. She sang to herself. She knew how to fix a fever. Little glimmers of people turned into warnings. You somehow slipped through the net. And now you dig in your garden, you dry your herbs. You write little notes in the margins of books, recipes, dreams, tiny rebellions. No one knows this, but you've started a journal. Not because you think your story will be read, but because you want it to exist. One afternoon you walk past the place where the stake once stood. Nothing's left now, just a patch of grass that refuses to grow quite right. The wood was taken down, repurposed, forgotten. The platform turned into firewood during a cold snap. That feels fitting. But in the spot where you once stood, someone has scratched something into a nearby tree. A small symbol barely visible unless you know to look. A flower with a flame at its center. You trace it with your fingertip. Someone remembers. You walk home with mud on your boots and the sky softening above you. The dog who once ate the witch's cake trots by your gate. You toss him a bit of carrot. He still looks at you like he knows things. Maybe he does. You sit on your stoop that evening watching dusk stretch over the rooftops. You think about all the other women who didn't make it, whose ashes scattered and names disappeared. You whisper their memory into the air, because someone should. And then, like always, you light your lamp, tie your hair back, and boil water for tea. You're not a witch, but you are stubborn. And in times like these, that's practically the same thing. Time, as it turns out, is not an apology. It doesn't make what happened fade, it just layers new days on top of the old ones, like blankets over a restless sleeper. Some mornings you wake up and your heart forgets to brace. Other mornings the past crackles through your bones like a storm trying to sneak in the back door. But life against all odds resumes. The garden flourishes again. Your rosemary returns stubborn and fragrant. The bees rediscover your lavender. A robin builds a nest in your eaves and chirps as if the world has always been this quiet. People begin to knock not out of suspicion but request. A woman comes asking for something to help her husband sleep. You give her chamomile and a smile that doesn't show all your teeth. A man requests something for his back too many years of lifting sacks and swallowing complaints. You give him comfrey and a gentle scolding to sit down once in a while. And one day, even Magda returns. She lingers by your gate with a sheepish look and a wrapped bundle in her hands. "Bread," she says. "Still warm." You nod. "Thank you." She hesitates. I was scared." "So was I," you say. She blinks, then nods and walks away. It's not forgiveness, but maybe it's a start. Historians often describe post-trial years with words like recovery or reintegration. They rarely mention the strangeness of being half-remembered, of being the woman no one quite knows how to treat. You're not a witch. You're not a martyr. You're an uncomfortable reminder that everyone got a little too close to the fire. But some are braver now. Children wave as they pass your garden. A girl drops off a drawing, a crude picture of you holding a flower that looks more like a lollipop, but still. It's taped to your wall now between a bundle of time and a dream that refused to die. Father Clement continues his visits, though. Now they're less about salvation and more about weather and books. He brings you paper and ink. He says you should write what happened, get it down before memory softens the edges. You do, quietly, in the evenings, by candlelight. You write everything. The smell of the wet rope, the ache of floating, the silence of the crowd, the too smooth voice of the priest who asked too many questions, the dog, the cross, the child who lied, the child who didn't. You don't know what you'll do with it, maybe nothing. But it exists, and that feels like something. Sometimes you still walk to the edge of the woods to where the goat was found. You bring a few herbs, tuck them under a stone, and whisper to the trees. Not for protection, just remembrance. The air smells different there, sharper, like it hasn't forgotten. One evening, as dusk pools across the village like ink spilled in slow motion, you stand at your door and watch the sky. It's pink. The good kind of pink. The kind that means tomorrow might be gentler. You sit down on the step with a cup of something warm and bitter. Your hands don't shake anymore, not much. You think I lived. And not just through it. After it. That might be the hardest part. The wind rustles the pages of your journal. You place a stone on top to hold them down. Nothing flies away this time, not even you. By midsummer, your garden has returned to its former glory and then some. The sunflowers reach higher than the fence now, nodding solemnly like guards who've seen too much. The thyme has spread without asking, the mint is unruly, and the bees have declared squatters' rights in the corner of your storage shed. You let them. It feels like a small rebellion to keep growing things in a place that once tried to unmake you. You're still watched, of course, always. But the attention has changed. It's more speculative now. Less witch and more odd neighbor with excellent soup. Even the judge passes by one day. He doesn't speak. Just tips his hat, mutters something about weather, and keeps walking. His wig is smaller now, as if his sense of importance has shrunk with the seasons. You wave politely, then go back to trimming your rosemary, but whispers never truly vanish. You hear it in the way someone says she's clever with her hands, as if that's something to be nervous about. You see it in how others hesitate to touch your herbs at market, as if basil might hex them. Historians refer to this phase as the quiet suspicion era, where communities stopped burning people but didn't necessarily stop believing. They just found subtler ways to express it. With distance, with hesitance, with a kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. Still, the village is quieter now, more careful, less eager to accuse. It's as if your survival planted something unexpected, the idea that maybe fear shouldn't be the loudest voice in the room. One afternoon, a traveling merchant visits. He has fabrics, copper pans, and stories. Over tea, he asks if you've heard about the new laws passed 2 towns over banning trial by ordeal altogether. They say it's unholy, he tells you, that only God may judge and no man should mimic his hand with rope or flame. You nod slowly. Took them long enough. He laughs. Progress moves like a drunk mule. Eventually it gets somewhere. You buy a pan and send him off with a satchel of dried lavender. Not because he asked, but because people who carry stories deserve better sense. Later that week, a letter arrives. You almost don't open it. Paper with wax seals brings too many memories. But curiosity wins. It's from a woman in another village. She writes in careful script, "I heard what happened. We've had 3 such cases in the last year. I'm trying to stop the next. If you're willing to share what you know, what you remember, it might help me. I don't want to see anyone else stand on a pyre." You fold the letter once, then twice, then unfold it again. And you begin to write. Not because you owe anyone anything, but because you remember what it felt like to be alone in a world that called you dangerous simply for knowing which roots ease a fever. You tell her about the floating, the cake, the dog, the wind that smelled like wet kindling. You include the herbs that helped you sleep. You leave out the cross but mention the lavender. You don't expect a reply, but it comes. A month later, she writes, "We stopped a trial." Someone remembered your story. It's just a sentence, but it lands with the weight of a cathedral bell. Your name, once muttered with scorn, is now a reason, a barrier, a memory someone used not to destroy, but to pause. You sit in the sun that day, bare feet in the grass, and allow yourself something rare pride. Because you didn't just survive, you left a path, and someone else walked it. It's late summer now, and the air smells like warm stone, ripe apples, and the kind of forgiveness no one ever says out loud. You find yourself moving more slowly, not from fear anymore, but from deliberation. Everything you do, sifting flour, tying herbs, lighting a lantern, feels like a quiet act of remembrance. The village continues its uneasy truce with your existence. People no longer cross the street to avoid you. Children no longer whisper when you pass. You've even been asked to help with a birth twice. You accepted. The babies arrived, healthy, squalling, and pink, unaware of the nervous glances in the room. The mothers thanked you. The fathers avoided eye contact. Progress. One afternoon, a young woman knocks on your door. She's not from the village. Her boots are too clean, her eyes too wide, and her questions come fast. "Are you the one who survived the trial?" You pause, hands dusted with flour, and ask, "Which trial?" She smiles. "Exactly. Her name is Hester. She's from a settlement a few days north, where rumors have reached her like breadcrumbs on the wind." She asks if you'll teach her. Teach you what everything she says? The herbs, the stories, the surviving. You look at her for a long time. She doesn't flinch. "Start with sweeping," you say, handing her a broom. "If you're going to learn anything, you need to know how to stay still and how to move fast." She grins and begins. Historians talk about legacies in terms of paper, what gets written down, preserved, cataloged. But the real stories are often passed hand to hand, leaf to leaf, in tea shared, in remedies whispered across steaming kettles, in the space between accusation and understanding. Hester stays for a week, then another. She helps you dig up the last of the potatoes and learns to hang time without crushing it. She practices writing her hand unsteady, her vowels rebellious. She asks questions about spirits, about salt circles, about why people fear what they cannot name. You tell her stories not just your own, but the ones passed down to you. Of women who danced in forests, not for magic, but because their feet needed to remember joy. Of men who healed with honey and were chased out for it. Of the time someone used goose grease to fake a possession just to get out of harvest season. She laughs loudly at that one. One morning she asks, "Do you think they'll ever stop being afraid?" You shake your head, but some might start thinking before they fear. That's enough. She writes that down. You give her a bundle of sage when she leaves. She ties it to her belt like a sword. As autumn edges closer, more letters arrive. Word has spread quietly, of course, like everything that matters. Others want to learn, some want to share. One woman writes from a coastal village, "We've started keeping records of those who didn't survive. We're writing their names in a book so they aren't just smoke anymore." You send a list. Not just the names you remember, but the ones you guessed at. The woman with the missing thumb, the boy with the broken voice, the girl who collected bones and made necklaces out of them, not to curse but to feel powerful in a world that never let her be. You write them all. At the edge of the village, a new carving appears, this time on stone, not tree. Just a small one. It says nothing fancy. To the accused, the burned, the broken, the spared. You bring a bundle of rosemary and lay it at the base. The wind carries the scent. A dog trots past and winks. You walk home with soot in your shoes and hope in your hands. And that night you light a single candle just bright enough to read by. You open your journal and write a simple sentence, still here. Then close the book with a soft thump and let the dark hold you without fear. Autumn deepens like a sigh held too long. The trees begin their slow undressing, revealing the spines of branches once hidden by green abundance. Your garden shrinks but stubbornly. The sage still clings to life. The fennel refuses to yellow. The soil remembers even as the world shifts around it. You rake leaves with practiced rhythm, gathering more than you'll need, some for compost, some for ceremony. You've taken to lighting small fires in the garden as the nights get colder. Not to summon anything, just to remind the darkness it's not the only force that knows how to linger. One night, as the smoke curls toward the stars, a shadow appears beyond the fence. It's the boy, the one who found the goat. He doesn't say anything at first, just stands there, arms hanging loose, face unreadable. You nod toward the bench. He climbs over the fence because of course he does and sits. "I thought you were dead," he says quietly. "I was almost," you reply, poking the fire. He looks at his feet. "I didn't do it for you. I just didn't want to lie." "That's better, you say. Truth doesn't owe anyone affection." He watches the flames dance. They still talk about it, you know. You nod. Let them. He frowns. They say you bewitched the goat to come back. You chuckle low and rough. That goat could barely find its own tail. If I had bewitched it, it would have come home with flowers and a song. He doesn't laugh exactly, but something softens. After a while he asks, "What happens to people like you?" "After all this?" You shrug. "We keep going. We plant things. We wait for snow. We build stories stronger than stakes." He looks at the flame again. "Will they burn anyone else?" You stir the embers. "Not if they remember." He nods slowly. Historians often note that after a particularly controversial trial, especially one where the verdict was reversed or hesitated, witch burnings slowed, not stopped, just hesitated. That hesitation, it turns out, is powerful. It creates space for thought, for second guesses, for change. You and the boy sit in silence until the fire collapses into glowing coals. He stands. "Good night," he says. "Stay out of the woods," you reply, "unless you want the foxes to teach you manners." He grins just barely and vanishes into the dark. Later that week, someone else knocks. This time it's an old man with hands like driftwood and a cap pulled low. He doesn't say why he's come, he just holds out a book, a ledger. "From my sister," he mumbles. "She said you'd want it. Inside names, dates, herbs. Notes from another woman who once stood where you stood. She didn't make it, but her words did." You hold the book close. Another record saved. Another truth preserved. You spend that evening copying the entries by candlelight, one eye on the window, half expecting the wind to change its mind again. But it doesn't. The air stays calm. Outside, the moon rises. Whole, bright, unbothered. You watch it through the pane and think not about the firewood, or the floating, or the false prayers, but about the girl with the herbs in her hair and the stubborn feet that refused to leave the village that betrayed her. She's still here. You sip your tea bitter with mugwort and smile. Because survival, once impossible, has become ordinary. And that is its own kind of magic. Winter doesn't arrive, it settles. Soft and heavy like a cat that's claimed your lap without asking. One morning you wake to find the world hushed in frost, the grass stiff with silence, and the sky white enough to make you blink. You wrap your shawl tighter and tend your herbs by candlelight, whispering to each one like an old friend. Most won't survive the cold, but a few, the tough ones, rosemary, yarrow, time they persist. Like you, the village prepares for the season the same way it always has, stacking firewood, pickling roots, darning socks. But this year, they also lower their voices less when you pass. Some even ask you questions. What do you use for chilblains? Can you teach me how to dry nettle without itching? Did you really make that goat come back? To that last one you say, no, I just stayed still long enough for it to get bored. And that answer seems to satisfy them. One day you receive a parcel wrapped in oilcloth tied with string. No note. Inside is a copy of a sermon copied in careful handwriting alongside a single silver coin. On the back of the sermon someone has written, "They tried to silence you. You spoke anyway." You tuck it into your journal. Add it to the record. Historians call this period the slow thaw. After the fever of witch hunts, after the roaring fires and sharpened sticks comes the long, confusing stretch of almost peace. Laws are reviewed. Priests begin to preach caution instead of conviction. But beneath it all, the fear lingers like smoke caught in the rafters. You still walk carefully, but you also walk openly. One morning you hear a knock. Not the fearful kind, not the frantic kind. A knock of purpose. Outside stands a traveler, tall, cloaked with wind-chapped cheeks and a satchel full of books. They bow not deeply, but respectfully. I was told they say you know the old stories. You do? They ask if they may stay a few days, share what they've gathered, trade knowledge, you make tea. By the fire, they open their satchel and begin laying out pages. Handwritten accounts from distant villages, names, dates, testimonies. Some you recognize, most you don't. Together you begin cross-referencing. You find a woman accused of bewitching cows in a coastal town, same month you were arrested. A man punished for speaking to birds, a girl imprisoned for drawing symbols in chalk that looked too much like runes. Each entry feels like a heartbeat, a life reaching across paper. You copy them carefully. The traveler stays 5 days. On the 6th, they leave at dawn your cottage smaller for the loss. They leave behind 2 books, 1 quill, and a promise. There are more of us. We're writing the truth now. That night, you stare at the ceiling thinking about stories. Not just your own, but all the ones that almost disappeared. How many voices vanished into smoke? How many memories turned to ash? You cannot bring them back, but you can write them down. So you do, one by one. Not to teach a lesson, not to claim victory, but to witness. The wind scratches at your shutters. You light a second candle. The ink freezes slightly in the inkwell. You hold it closer to the flame and keep going. At some point you fall asleep at the table cheek, pressed to the page. When you wake, the candle has burned low, but the words are still there. And outside, under a sky of hard stars, the world waits quiet and just a little less cruel than it was before. Snow arrives without ceremony. No warning flurries, no theatrical gusts, just a quiet fall, soft as breath, blanketing the world in forgetfulness. For a moment, it's easy to believe that everything has always been like this. Still, pale, peaceful. You wake slowly that morning, reluctant to move. The fire has burned down to a faint glow. The window panes are feathered with frost. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders and watch the snow settle in the corners of the windowsill, like sugar spilled by a too generous hand. You light a candle not because you need the light, but because it's tradition now. Outside, your garden sleeps beneath its shroud. The thyme is gone. The rosemary holds on. The lavender droops but does not fall. You pull on your boots, open the door, and step into the white. The crunch beneath your feet is a small miracle proof that you're still here, still solid, still rooted in this place that once tried to burn you out of it. You make your way to the spot where the stake once stood. No one marked it, no stone, no plaque. But you remember, the wind remembers. You kneel clear the snow from a patch of earth and press your hand to the cold soil. You whisper the names again, the ones you wrote, the ones others sent, the ones no one else remembers. You stand slowly brushing snow from your skirts. The air is still. Your breath curls into it and vanishes. Back inside, you return to your table. You've added pages to your ledger. A second volume now, soon a third. You've become something unexpected. Not just a survivor, a keeper, a quiet guardian of memory. Historians often debate when the witch trials truly ended. Some say the last execution, others the last accusation. But maybe it ends here in the home of a woman who should have died but didn't, who writes down the names and stories others would rather forget. You boil water for tea, add chamomile, a touch of lemon balm. You sit at the window and watch the snow fall. And in that stillness you feel something begin to soften, not erasure, but peace. A candle flickers. The pages whisper against each other, and the world outside exhales. You sit in your chair as the evening folds over the cottage like a worn quilt. The candle burns low, casting long shadows across the floor, softening every edge, rounding each corner. The fire has gone quiet now, no crackles, just a steady warmth that seeps into the bones of the room and yours. Outside, the snow continues. Not hurried, not harsh, just falling steadily like time itself. You breathe in slowly. The air is scented with herbs, old paper, and wood smoke. Familiar things, comforting things. You look around and let your eyes rest gently on each object, the book on the table, the teacup still warm in your hand, the shawl draped across your knees. These are the details of your quiet survival, the tools of your stillness, the souvenirs of a life that could have ended in fire but instead found its way back to earth. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and the world slows with you. The wind nudges the shutters like an old friend checking in. You are here. You are whole. You are safe for now, and perhaps for longer. The candle sighs, the shadows blur, and sleep patient and kind comes to find you at last.